Reaction to Christianity in European manners. I offer the following scheme for the sake of clarity. Paganism, doctrine, mystical union, blissful divine love, theoretical application, woeful human love, historical fulfillment, hedonism, passion rare and despised. Christianity, doctrine, communion, but no union of essence. Theoretical application, love of our neighbor, blissful marriage. Historical fulfillment, painful clashes, intense passion. Psychologically, the paradoxes of this scheme are pretty easily accounted for. Neither during Plato's own lifetime nor in the course of the ensuing few centuries did Platonism become popular. It remained an esoteric wisdom. Esoteric, likewise, to some extent, were the Celtic mysteries, and the Manichaean entirely so. Thereupon, Christianity triumphed. Under Constantine and under the Carolingian emperors, its doctrines became the appanage of princes and ruling caste. Who forced them upon all the peoples of the West. This, of course, meant the repression of the old pagan beliefs, which became the hope and refuge of natural inclinations frowned upon and not disposed of by the new rule. In the eyes of the ancients, marriage, for example, was a utilitarian institution of limited purpose. If not adultery as understood today, at least concubinage was allowed by custom, for slaves could be both used and abused. In Roman law, slaves were not persons. Persona est sui iuris, servus non est persona. I'm going to read that again. In the eyes of the ancients, marriage, for example, was a utilitarian institution of limited purpose. If not adultery as understood today, at least concubinage was allowed by custom, for slaves could be both used and abused. But Christian marriage, inasmuch as it is a sacrament, imposed on the natural man a constancy which he found unbearable. Anyone compulsorily converted came under the restraints of the Christian code, but lacked the support of any actual faith. Inevitably, the barbarian blood of such people must have rebelled, and they were all disposed to welcome a revival of the pagan mysteries in Catholic guise, since this brought a promise of emancipation. Hence it was that the secret doctrines of which we have been investigating the antecedents had no real hold on the West, except during the centuries they were banned by official Christianity. So it was that passionate love, a terrestrial form of the cult of Eros, came to invade the psyche of those members of the leading caste who had only simulated conversion and felt the marriage rule as a restriction. Yet devotion to a god who was anathema to the church could not be avowed in the light of day. It took esoteric forms and flourished in the guise of secret heresies more or less orthodox in appearance. At the beginning of the 12th century, these heresies spread quickly. On the one hand, they wormed their way among the clergy, and a little later were manifested in many subtle and complicated ways in the great mystical revival. On the other hand, they drew a ready response out of the depths of the spirit of the age. They were able to penetrate the feudal world, which was not invariably aware of the source and mystic significance of a set of values it treated as fashionable and which it adapted to the purposes of its own amusement. Before long, a religion that rejected the incarnation as something too materialistic had itself taken on a materialistic tinge. It has been typical of the West as regards religion to keep the letter while betraying the spirit. Here is one instance. Plato linked love and beauty, although what he called beauty was above all the intellectual essence of uncreated perfection. the form of all excellence. According to Jose Ortega y Gasset, number 1, Measures number 2, Paris 1937, the Provençal mentioned there was in reality the dialect of the country of Toulouse. According to Jose Ortega y Gasset, it is impossible to tell to what deep levels of the Western mind Platonic notions have penetrated. The simplest sort of person regularly employs expressions and betrays views which are derived from Plato. But such a person distorts these expressions and views in a direction suited to his Western nature. And it is in this way that popular Platonism has led us into a grievous error, the error of supposing that love is first and foremost a matter of physical beauty. When actually this beauty is but an attribute bestowed by a lover on the chosen object of his love. Daily experience shows well enough that love beautifies its object, and that official beauty is no pledge of being loved. But the degenerate Platonism by which we are obsessed blinds us to the reality of the object as it is according to its own truth, or else tenders it little likable. And it sends us in pursuit of chimeras that exist only inside ourselves. It may well be asked why an error due to misunderstanding Plato should have succeeded so well and have endured invincibly. The error awakens obscure responses in every human being's heart, and in particular in the heart of every European. We have seen that as far back as the Celts, the Druidical cult turned woman into a prophetic being, the eternal feminine, and man's goal. In this way it sought to materialize the divine urge and to endow it with a corporeal hypostasis. Moreover, Freud has now made us aware that a man's type of woman, that image which he bears graven upon his heart and instinctively turns into a definition of feminine beauty, may be but a mother fixation haunting the recesses of his memory. Assuming that we have now distinguished the causes of the curious contradiction between teaching and manners that grows visible in the 12th century, it becomes possible to formulate a preliminary inference. The cultivation of passionate love began in Europe as a reaction to Christianity, and in particular to its doctrine of marriage, by people whose spirit, whether naturally or by inheritance, was still pagan. But this would be mere theory and highly disputable were it not that we are in a position to trace the historical ways and means to the rebirth of Eros. We have already settled on a date. The earliest passionate lovers whose story has reached us are Abelard and Eloise, who met for the first time in 1118. And it is in the middle of this same century that love was first recognized and encouraged as a passion worth cultivating. Passionate love was then given a name which has since become familiar. It was called courtisia, or courtly love.